Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Haling wa salim bikum. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi katu. Lil ikwani wati fi deen. Wassalamu ala mani tabahuda. Lil ikwani wati fi Afrika, Europa, Caribbean wa America wa kuli makan. Haling wa salim bikum. Yes, my dear brothers and sisters, short notice today. I just wanted to cover something before I get to the Exodus about more proof of in linguistics that prove that the ancient Kemites were Black Africans. I had told our good brother Marcus, he and I discussed this quite a bit, and we talk about the other issues of East Africa and so forth, so on. And we, I was telling him before that the thing that trumps all of the so-called Egyptologists is the linguistics. They don't want to touch that. Matter of fact, I read a document today where, again, they were talking about the issue, they don't test the royal mummies. And they were coming up with all kind of DNA, genotypes and all that, but they don't touch the royal mummies. And they don't touch the linguistics because that in itself destroys them. But our greatest African scholars did do it. And some of the Europeans, rightful Europeans, Tubab Europeans, who also did. And he wrote accordingly from their study and from their findings. And so we have to give credit where credit is due. Okay, let's see who we have here. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother. How you doing? Thank you for showing up. And I appreciate your time and showing up to be with your brother here today. I really greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi barakatuh. And so, as you heard me say the last couple of weeks, I've been tying in West Africa, the Fulani, the Hausa, Tiv, Yoruba, Wolof, Jolof, Mende, Mandinka. You go across Songa, you go across the board. I've been trying to tie this in. So that way you have the ammunition and knowledge to combat anybody who comes with this theory that the Tubab was actually they were the originals or the aboriginals of Kemet, of Egypt, ancient Egypt. We know that's not the case. The last couple of days, I feel it it's come from provocateurs, Tubab, who are making silly, ridiculous comments, nitpicking here and there, talking stuff. None of them brings any evidence or anything. They're just trying to provoke. And one wrote me and told me about the map. He was complaining about the map and so forth. He didn't bother to look at my program. He just only saw the map, and he started to chide me to tell me basically I was stupid, ignorant. If this is what I'm going by as a map, I ignored you. That's why you didn't see it. You might have seen it said comment. I ran it. I don't give these guys time of day anymore because now they're doing it almost every single day, 2, 3, 4 times per day, sometimes 5. They'll come in with snide comments, and I ignored that. Brothers and sisters, there's something that's very interesting about this saga that ties us in, is the linguistics. I've said this many times. You cannot bring in the European aspect of this, and because of their languages, they cannot. Because when you look at the hieroglyphics, we have too many possibilities, and why we have so many similarities and whatnot between us. What is the difference between the ancient Kemites and the West Africans? None. There's no difference, brothers and sisters. When we talk about the Exodus, everybody understands the Exodus being the Jews and Hebrews and their exit from Kemet into quote unquote the promised land. I already told you about who these people were originally the Jews and Hebrews, they were black. But the other aspect of the Exodus they don't talk about is the West African, because why they don't talk about this? Anything that's black gets close to the fallacy of the European scholars. They try to dismiss it. When you ask people about Egypt, you notice about Egypt and West Africa, they'll say, okay, yeah, okay, I admit they came from the Rift Valley, but they just came across and that's it. They don't want to say they went to the north. Why? Because the fallacy is that the north was inhabited by legendary Tubal, which is not the case. We know the Romans came. We know the Greeks came. We understand they colonized. We defeat them. They come back. They colonize. Anytime a man colonizes anywhere, he always mates with the women. We know this. Okay, we know this for a fact. But they don't want to tie in the West Africans to Kemet. But now I'm going to give you something today. I'm going to cover two. I'm going to cover the Yoruba people, and I'm going to cover the Fulani people to show you the connection. I'm going to give you that. And you remember something, brothers and sisters. When I say to you, there's no difference between, well, here we go again. I showed this map again to a lot of people, and I had some ridiculous comments told me here the other day that was absolutely disgusting what he had said. It was racist on top of that. He claimed he was Fulani, but I know that's not the case. He's Tubab. And he refused to acknowledge this. And you know, even though I said, look, you got famous people who are doing, they have nothing to gain by the DNA. This is what we have for the DNA to show us that we are connected to West Africa, that the ancient Kemites are the West Africans. There's no doubt about this. As you can see in this chart, which I gave 2 weeks ago, it's clear, brothers and sisters. It's very clear that we are the caretakers. We were the caretakers of the ancient Kept civilizations. And there was 31 dynasties, and all 31 dynasties were black. Yes, there were a period of times when the Romans and Greeks came in, but we don't count them. They were not the royal families. They were not the royal pharaohs, so to speak. It's not them. They were conquerors, and they don't belong into what we call the OT. The OT is the king's list. They're not mentioned, even though they tried to wrestle the king's list away from us by changing all the names to make the great names Greek to appear like all 31 dynasties. And there was many pharaohs, of course, in each dynasty. And they try to claim that later on, when racism began to come in, that everything was white and Greek and Roman, which we know that's not the case. So we understand that. But I'm going to give you some things here right now, brothers and sisters, to help you along in this. I'm going to take something from Sheikh Jab, because it's his brilliance, him and Professor Obenga. As you heard me say last week, last week, or was it this week? This week, I think, a couple of days ago. There was a 1-2 punch at 1974 UNESCO symposium about ancient Kept. And of course, they were drafting a one-time letter to say once and for all that ancient Egypt, Kept, as we understand it to be, was a European civilization. And our brothers showed up and showed out there. The Professor Benga covered the linguistics, and Sheikh Diab, the geneticist, the historian deluxe, he covered the historical factor and the cultural factors and so forth and so on, and the Melon test to prove that the ancient Egyptians were black. And again, that Melon test is so important, because when you test the melanated skin of someone, especially European and African, there's a major difference. We understand why Subhanahu wa ta'ala done that. It has nothing to do with superiority, inferiority. Matter of fact, it's the brilliance and the wisdom of Subhanahu wa ta'ala, because as the colder climates to the north, where you have 7, 8, 9 months of winter, you don't need black skin there. You need a heavier build, meaning heavier fat around the organs to protect it. And you need more hair to keep the skin from being chafed from the cold weather. In the tropics, you don't need white skin. You need black skin because of the rays of the sun, which are prevalent most of the whole year, and the heat factor. See, So Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gave us something that helped us to adapt to the environments that we live in. So one of the things, brothers and sisters, we're gonna get into here is I'm gonna talk about the camp. I'm gonna talk about the Yoruba people first. As you can see here, brothers and sisters, I hope the print is big enough. You can see here, there's the connection here between the Egyptian and Yoruba. Here, now you want to understand where Yoruba come from. It came from ancient Egypt, from the linguistics. See, and each period we've had pharaohs who were Yoruba. Some were Igbo. Many were Fulani. We had those House of Brothers. When House of Brothers took over, it's them who made a very different. They had a design on their doors to show that they were the king, and this is the entry into their castle. Remember, it was called Shiriki, means it was this is the sign of the king, and so forth and so on, which is a Hausa language. So we have that. I didn't touch on the Fulani. I didn't touch on the Yoruba. I didn't touch on the Mandinka because it's all tied in. But I wanted to give you something to show you again how linguistics, anytime that people start talking, they start talking about what they do. They show pictures of themselves that they transpose to make them look Egyptian and so forth. But when you ask about the linguistics, that's where they get. They can't answer you with this. Now we have proof of this. If you see this, the connection of ancient Egypt, Sheikh Job, his book, brilliant book, and also the book here, you said Religion of the Yoruba. These are people who came and did did their studies and so forth and so on to prove that the language from the West Africans are the same language that was spoken in ancient Egypt, and we have those similarities, as you can see here. Here you have at the bottom, the author cites many words common within the Egyptian and Yoruba. Now, when you pull English, you pull French, you pull Russian, you pull Scandinavian, you pull Spanish, you pull Latin, their languages don't match up. But how is it when you go to the west, all these languages from Fulani, the Hausa, Tif, you find all the similarities in language from the ancient Mentor Neher. Remember, I told you the other day about how you had the original, and then you had the new form, which add the vowels. So we have the differences here, and we have shown how we have things that are very similar. And here you can see this. And again, if you can't see it very good, you pull it up at the convenience of your time at another time, and to review my khutbah, which means talk. And here you have something to show you the similarities. Then we go from there to here, where we have the showing the name, how we got Yoruba, how the Yoruba people got their name. They got it when this name became the name that they adopted in Kemetic. And then when it's time for the Exodus to go to West Africa, this is who they became. See, so we have this, and again, you read this at your leisure, you'll have this evidence, and it's all germane. And it shows you, I'm just picking two groups out, the Yoruba today and the Fulani. I'm going to get maybe into some other ones too to show you the connections, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Again, proving that Egypt, ancient Kemetic, was ours. This is our civilizations. Those 31 dynasties were African. We're not West African. We're not talking about the Romans and the Greeks and so forth and so on. We're not talking about them, because they're not part of, they were invaders. Okay, they were invaders and so forth and so on. And so this is we can't use them and say they're native to the land. Yes, they came many centuries ago, but that's another story altogether. And here we have the part here again showing how we got Yoruba. How do we come up with the Yoruba people? Now we got the linguistics, how in ancient Egypt, how they used this language. It was part because, again, as each group took over in the dynasties, each began to name Subhanahu wa Ta'ala its own names. You understand what I mean? like I gave you the Akan. Remember here, what about a week or 2 weeks ago now, I start you off with the Akan people and some of the God people. I gave you names that was equivalent to when they were in charge, when the Khan first came and then the God came and so forth and so on. But remember the pictures I showed you the other day. There's a slew of other Black Africans who begin to come in there because the mural that I showed you, the hieroglyphics, the picture that was taken showing a community of Black folk. Each, they're different in clothing and so forth and so on. There's some differences in complexion and whatnot. But it goes to show you, brothers and sisters, that this is again the epitome of who was in charge. The dynasties run. When the Fulani came, I'll get to them in a minute. When the Fulani came in, they added their own. The Hausa, I told you, they had their own way, and they called Subhanahu wa Ta'ala the names under their dialect. See, so this is how how we got to this point. And the Yoruba people do to, because there's again the key. How did the West Africans, how did the ancient Kemites become West Africans? Now I'm giving you more proof. This is how the Yoruba were there in Kemt, and they spoke a dialect, a old, original Yoruba language. And when they were in charge, when they were the pharaohs and they were running the government, they changed things according to their dialect, no different than anyone else. When the Fulani came in, the Hausa came in, as you heard me say, they put their own things on that. And I'll get into the Fulani, as I said, here in a couple minutes. I want you to look at this real good to see how in ancient Egypt, what happened, how we got the Yoruba people, how their name derived from. It's beautiful. Now we understand this. And remember, for weeks now, I've talked about, for about a year, people have been arguing about the Fulani. Was the Fulani from Turkey? Was the Fulani from Europe? Was Fulani from Japan? Did the Fulani come from the ocean? Did he come from the trees? I mean, there was all kinds of things that was bannered about the Fulani people because it is a mystery. But I'm going to show you something, brothers and sisters, that tells you it wasn't so much as a mystery as we were talking. Because the murals show the Fulani people there in Kemt. And what were they doing? They were minding the cattle. As a matter of fact, they were an important aspect of the society for many of the dynasties when they finally got there. Because apparently when they came there, they brought cattle with them. Because the murals show this, them minding the cattle. And again, as the Fulani are best known for, tending to the cattle and producing milk and products. This was big because even in the hieroglyphics, they talked about the cattle, the meat from the cattle, the byproducts from the cattle and so forth. And they showed pictures of people that weren't as Black as others. See, and I'm gonna tell you why that is, because now we came up with the answer. So my final answer to my Fulani brothers who have said, we've talked about this, and women too, sisters, is the Fulani people came from Egypt. No doubt, Kemp. No doubt they came from there. No doubt in my mind now, because I'll give you something into that in a bit. I want you to see that because that's important. And I'm going to get to this part again here to show you the Egyptian societies along that you have here. You have, again, you got different Black people there in Kemt. You have the black people, Nubia people, which, as you heard me say, they have never changed. You go to Sudan, modern day Sudan, the people who descended, we call the Nuba people, who are the Nubians, are still Black as night. Okay, very, very Black. Never seen anybody quite like them. As you heard me say, blue Black, green Black, they have this tinge about them. I never seen anybody that Black before in my life. And you have that. And the murals show here of the different ones. You have different Black people and different shades of color. But if you remember what Herodias had wrote, and Herodias didn't make a distinction in the sense of saying that one was white and one was Black. No, he didn't say that. He said this, again, as you heard me say the other day, that all the people were Black folk. and it was just it was in the story. So that covered that, and I wanted to make sure we have that understanding, because I want you guys to see that that how important it is, the linguistics. The pictures are good, the murals are good, but eyewitness accounts are outstanding, because we have Europeans, two Bob Europeans, who gave us accounts of what they saw. And we have other ones too. And there's other ones, I don't want to have to mention your name, because there's a lot of literature that's wrote about that. And they describe the ancient Egyptians as well. And we had some of them who dealt into the linguistics, which is very interesting in itself. So we go back to this, the Yoruba again. We look at this, and the pre-Islamic. We talk about at least 1,000, 2,000, maybe even more than that. So I'm sure about 3,500 years before Islam, before we all begin to take Islam in West Africa, and so forth and so on. So we had our period of time where, again, we had a mixture of Tawhid, the monotheism, and other deities that they considered and whatnot and so on. So it was not a perfect form of monotheism as we understand it. That didn't start to. We had it on and off until the 18th dynasty, where I'll get into that with the Exodus. We had the Tawhid, again in Arabic, the oneness of Allah, God, and so forth and so on. And then it took off, and then of course they went back to change, to go back to where it was before. So again, this is another tidbit information, brothers and sisters, to help you to understand the Yoruba people, their connection to to Kemet. And we understand too. You remember here I showed you the chair of that was related to the Yoruba people and whatnot that they had took, which was, this is here. Remember here? Now you understand where we got that from. When they left in the Exodus, that nobody's actually talked about, the ancient Kemites now become the West Africans. They never talk about that because they don't want you to know about this. This is a famous chair that's carbon dated and so forth, that they took out of Egypt when they left. This is unequivocal proof right here. And the designs and descriptions and hieroglyphics, how can we have that, brothers and sisters? It goes to show you again that ancient Egyptians were Black Africans, and we are the descendants of them by the DNA. But we have physical evidence like this. The Yoruba people have this chair here, which is excuse me, not the Yoruba, the Khan. But the Yoruba people also have a chair too that they took. This is the Khan, but the Yoruba people also have one chair that they use, that the royal, the pharaohs used, and so forth and so on. So we have that, and that evidence is very important for all of us, brothers and sisters, when we get to examine, because the way you fight all the talk today is you go back to linguistics. You have that, because that in itself, and when you start talking about the hieroglyph, you ask them, what is the name of the language that was used? Many of these people who are screaming and yelling now, racism all over the place, they don't know the language. When you start to ask them, what was the ancient language of Kemet, they can't tell you. They'll tell Arabic. It's a lie. It's not true. The Arabic didn't come until the 7th century. So what was it before that? So what do you call the hieroglyphics? See, these are things you trump them. When they would start to talk about French and Latin, you know it's not the truth. See, so this is, again, brothers and sisters, why this is it's a big problem. Okay, big problem. And I'm giving you the evidence so you can fight the people back in this regard without having to yell and scream. You start asking, hey, what was the language that was spoken there? What was the writing, the scripts called? And you start asking them and see what they say. And then you ask them, well, why is their language and the inscriptions very similar to the scripts of all of the West Africans? Why is it different from the Europeans? I mean, there's a lot of ways how you can defeat this premise that's by some of our racist Tuba historians and so forth and so on. So now I'm gonna start now running you to the Fulani people here in a minute. Here is again, brothers and sisters, another example of the ancient language that was spoken, dialects that were spoken in Kemet. Because you got to think about it, there was 31 dynasties. You're talking about thousands of years. It wasn't just a 50-year thing, it was thousands of years. So each time a group would take over in Kemet, see, and then their language would prevail. So here we have again this similarities in the meta here on your left, and that of Senegal. And here we're talking about, as you see down near the last Bahra. I'll get into that. How many people who are Fulani have the name Bari? Huh? There's many, isn't it? Now you understand. I'll give you why that name came about here shortly here, inshallah. And here in Senegal, there's here which he's talking mainly about the Fulani people and the Sere people and the Mandinka. Okay, and all of, and there's other subgroups, the Wolof and so forth and so on, because all of them are intertied. But you see here how the languages, okay, are almost the same. The Neher that was spoken, and this is what's translated off the documents of the papyrus and off the monoliths. And you look at to your right, this is Senegal talking about the Fulani, the Mandinka, the Siri, and the Wolof people, and so forth and so on. See, so now I'm giving you more ammunition. The Europeans don't have this connection in the linguistics. We do. This is the thing that trumps them. You can manufacture 1,000 pictures what they have. Their media, all of the Western press, the TV stations, all promoting that Kemp was Tubab. But they never touched the linguistics because that kills them. And when you start asking them, you say, look, I looked at Mehnater, it's not nothing close to the European languages. It may, there's some, because the Greeks were there, they borrowed a lot from the Egyptians, and they admit that in their documents. But when you start to ask them about the linguistics, they don't want to touch that. They say, look, you look at my pictures, you look at what we draw. They show everything lily white, and so forth and so on. And when you start to talk to them again about the hair strand test that was done by a Jewish scientist, they don't want to touch that either. See, so this is some of the things, brothers and sisters, the evidence that I'm giving you today that should help to trump some of this madness that we see on YouTube today. But this is for you, my Black brothers and sisters, everywhere you may be, to help you to reclaim your history. Because even though you may not think it's nothing, it is something. Because if it's nothing, why would they try to take it from us? See, this is the thing. We got a comment here. Yes. Oh, yes. Because all of the West African language, my dear brothers, are interrelated. Because why? We were in close vicinity with one another in Kemet. We lived in communities and so forth and so on. And there was one national language, yes. But then, inside the house, moms and pops spoke Akan, or moms and pops next door, they spoke Wolof. One family down the street were Fulani, they spoke in the Fulfulde dialect, okay, which is an old primitive dialect of original Fulfulde dialect, which I'll get into here in a few minutes. And so all these families had languages. And again, brothers and sisters, you saw my entry here where we had the society here again of the ancient Egyptians, and you see there's a variety of different Black folk that the murals show. And you heard me talk again, it don't show nothing about the Tubab, because the Tubab was not part of the community. As a matter of fact, because we've proven this too, even by the historians. When the Romans and Greeks begin to take charge, the Black folk begin to go south. That's right. And they begin to separate from them. But there was one group of Black people who didn't separate. And I'll get into that. Will explain some things, brothers and sisters. This evidence here will tie in the missing piece about the Fulani people. See, And this is something because I mean, I have brothers, Ghanaian brothers, and they made comments. I don't understand about the Fulani, why they're this way, why their culture is different, why they look like this. Now we understand. I'll give you some things about that. But we have, as our brothers start going down to the south, which we call Lower Egypt, we call Upper Egypt, means to the south. They begin to depict on the murals all these community of black people, and ranging in different colors. Okay, this is very, very fascinating in itself. Now let me give you, boy, you know what I see. Where is the Fulani? Now that's very, brothers, sisters. I gotta get my. They removed the Fulani, the evidence I had in here. They removed it. Oh boy, if I can, I hope they didn't. No, oh man. Yes, okay. Polar. Oh man, they took it out, brothers and sisters. This enemy is something else. They have nothing better to do than to do this type of thing like this. I'm trying to find it. Excuse me, because I had it in my notes. This is just not secure. You know, as much as we pay for this, these guys can come into your account and they can take pictures out of your out of your bureau. It's not right. Synagogue camp. Okay. I don't have that. I don't. They removed it, brothers and sisters. I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to get into. We've got one more here. How you doing, my dear brother? Peace. Thank you very much for showing up. I think both Arabs and whites know the truth, but they don't care. They used to fake history as a tool. Black people need to have their own nation worldwide. Yes. See, this is because we have so much apathy. This is why they've been able to control us, because they've controlled everything. They control the continent. They control what we eat. They control if we are poverty and so forth and so on. They control our jobs. We are not free. Yes, you walk around, you breathe the air and so forth and so on, but you're still not free. Then the same enemy brings in turncoat Africans to rule over us, who their main apparatus is to assist the disbelievers and assist the outsiders, and not to help their brothers. So this enslavement continues, even though you have a black face that's running it, but it's a Tuba face behind him who's barking out the orders. And how is it on our continent we're still between 40 to 60% illiterate? I mean, it's incredible. And then how about we're still very poor when we have all this medical wealth? Every one of us here on this continent should be driving multi-cars. All of us live in a big villa with hectares of land. We have so much wealth, all of us wouldn't even need to work anymore. With all the wealth that we have, everybody will be wealthy. But we're sitting in poverty. You see what I mean? We're not free yet. We're just not free. I got some notes here that will probably tie it in because they removed my pictures out of here, brothers and sisters. This is, okay. I'm going to get now we're going to start to get into the Fulani part. The dialect that was used a long time ago, we don't actually have the name that the Futufula were using in Kept. We don't have this. But let me preface something for you, brothers and sisters. Now we have had this thought of all the Africans, especially West Africa. We asked the question about the Fulani, why they look different, huh? Why many of us are very light-skinned. We have long hair and so forth. We have generally more hair on our faces and so forth, and our complexions are usually much lighter than our West African brothers and Central African brothers and so forth and so on, right? The reason for that, brothers and sisters, as scientists have found, remember I told you when the Greeks, let me see if I can pull up something here, see if we can pull up the, here, okay. When the Greeks and the Romans begin to come, our people been going, we start to go down south. If you see going down, you start to go down south, okay? You start going, which is now, we know is Upper Egypt, that means southern, okay? Lower Egypt means north. So Upper Egypt means south. They start to go down there, okay? And they start to form their communities. And I showed you, again, the picture how these communities were forming down to the south. And to the north were the Tubab, and to the south were the black folk. Even in those days, there was a nationalistic type of thing among our people. We didn't want to mix with them. So majority of us left to go down to Upper Egypt, which is in the lower cataracts, and go to the south into the Nile. And this is where black people still today, Nubian people, the Said people, all these black people are still down in the southern part of Egypt, as we call it today. But brothers and sisters, there was one ethnic group of black people that didn't leave. They did not leave. They stayed up in the north Egypt as we know today, and they were the Fulani people. And what we suspect is that the Fulani people, even in those days, were wealthy because of the cattle. If you read the hieroglyphics and the history, the OT, especially the King's List, you'll find the wealth of the cattle herders. This is why you find many murals of the cattle herders, and the Fulani tend to the cattle. When the Greeks and the Romans began to come to the north from the Red Sea, from the top up here, they encountered again the Fulani people. The same thing would happen to Islam. When the Afro-Arabs come in the late 600s and the early 700s, they came across to the Sahara. They came across Fulani people. They gave the Fulani people Islam. And then we've been Muslims ever since, around about 711 when we went into Al-Andalus. You know the story, I gave you that. Here in ancient times, the Fulani people stayed to the north because of their wealth. And they intermixed with Romans and Greeks. This explains why the Fulani people have the different looks, complexions, and body build from their West African brothers. Originally they were black, yes. And maybe some did go down to the southern part and stayed with their black brothers. But a great majority of the Fulani stayed to the north, and they intermixed with the Romans and the Greeks. This is what caused the Fulani to have the complexions and the variances of color, hair textures, body build, and so forth. Some of us are dark. Some of us are very light. Some of us are in between. Now you understand how the Fulani became the way they are. I hope that answered that. Now, we may have disagreements because we have Fulani people say, no, we came directly out of Europe. Some say, no, we came from Turkey. There was a lot of debates like this. But I'm giving you some from ancient Egypt, brothers and sisters. Okay? We got a problem because ancient Egypt is filled with Fulani history. So how can that be? If we weren't there, then how is it that we have many dynasties in there, inside Egypt? And I'm gonna get to that. But this evidence, okay, well, okay, the Fulani are in Ethiopian houses. Yes, they're there. We know. There was a major, we know the Exodus that happened. The Exodus everybody talks about is what happened with the Jews and Hebrews. They were black, and they went into quote unquote the promised land, into Jazera Arab as we understand it today. But we know that the Exodus went to West Africa. Okay, we understand it, and Central Africa. The Fulani people are everywhere. There's only one ethnic group that is everywhere in every quote unquote state in Africa are the Fulani people. They're everywhere. They're even in Azania, down South Africa. They're there, brothers and sisters. They're even in Madagascar. The island sits off where you see, Mozambique. And there's an island, those famous islands, all those beautiful women. They're half Asian and half African. Beautiful, beautiful African sisters who mix with the Asians. They said the Indonesians came in boats and they intermixed with the Black African population there in Madagascar. We're there as well. See, we're in Central and South part of Africa, as well. This is why you see the LO series among many of the Fulani people, like my mom. See, my mom was Fulani, but she was mixed also with Amazigh, which we call the Berber, but that's a derogatory term. See, but I wanted to give you that to give you the evidence that you can start to do your research. And again, brothers and sisters, we have the okay, where are we at here? Okay, yeah. In the Futafole, the language, the Fufode languages, Ka and Ba is big. It's in the prefixes and the suffix of the names. This is, they took this out from Egypt again. Related also that is Wolof and Jolof and Siri also, because apparently it looked like we were in close proximity in Egypt together, and we left together along with the Amazigh people. This is why I was telling you before, the western corridor of the Sahel, the Fulani people have Amazigh blood in them, because the Amazigh people, the Tuareg and all that, they have that heritage as well. Here, I'm giving you something. The ancient religion that was used by the Fulani people when they took charge of Kemet. We had a pharaoh by the name of Ka. And what they came up with their religious concepts of Tawhid. Each one had its own. Remember, we talked about, we had when the Akan were running the show, I showed you the names that was transposed, right? And the Greeks tried to change that. And I showed you how the linguistics, how the Akan names. I gave you some parts of the Hausa as well when they were in charge. In the 17th and to the early part of the 18th dynasties, the Fulani people began to now run the show in Kemet. And they began to put their spin on the religion. We had this Ka and we had this Ba. Beri, the name you find many Fulani people named Beri, comes from the religious concepts from ancient Egypt that our ancestors practiced at that time. Also, Diop, also not Diop, excuse me, Diallo. That's another deriving from different aspects of the religion that was practiced by the Fulani people in the 17th and the 18th dynasties. So what is significant about this, brothers and sisters, is that the Ka is, the Fulani people believe that when you passed, when a person died, they used the term Ka. And then the Ba is the soul. Now, you remember the doggone people I talked to you about. I have heritage with them as well. You'll find Fulani people, a lot of them have doggone in their bloodline. The doggone people rely heavily on the Messina for full-day dialect. Remember, I told you about that. And so the Fulani people believe that the unification of the soul is in the inner space. And this unification of Ka and Ba. This is what the Fulani people believed before pre-Islam. The pharaoh who orchestrated this and protected this part of the religion, his name was Ka. Pharaoh Ka. Fulani, he was Fulani. Then they called the burials of this Kara. Any of my brothers here who speak the Fulfulde dialects, you can chime in on this, because this is interesting. This is what we pull from the hieroglyphics. I told you now for weeks upon weeks, I've been building you up, telling you things about the Fulfulde people. We've been debating where the Hausa came from. We debated where the West Africans come from. We had all of these concepts. We was not sure, and so forth and so on. Now I'm giving you proof, my proof, what I believe, that the Hausa people originated, even though we have Tubab Tuma, they originated out of Europe. That's preposterous, because the linguistics always beat the racist Tubab who claim that Egypt is theirs. The linguistics, brothers and sisters, like now, here. So they had this designation. The Futafula were described as black. They were described as black because Herodias talked about these people that he saw. They were black people. And then, of course, other historians come back after that when they start to mix. But he noticed a difference with these particular black people, because when Herodias came, the Greeks had already came. So they start to mix with the Fulani people. And you remember the Hausa, the Ga, the Wolof and Jolof and the Mende and Mendinka, Yoruba and Igbo and the Khan and the Asante, all those people didn't want to mix with they wanted a separation. So they stayed away from the north, in North Egypt as we understand today. And they went down to build their communities, and the civilizations continued to the south. So you had two different states. You had the state to the north now because the Greeks and Romans took it. And then you had to the south where the black folk took it. And who was waiting in the wings to fight against them? There was our Nubian brothers. That's why you see all those murals again, because the Nubians were something else in warfare. We know that. And the Kemites had a name for them, and I can't remember the name in hieroglyphics. They had a name, they called them because they were good with the arrows and the lances. I can't think of the name of it. But they began to go down there and seek protection, basically because they were now, the country was now divided because the Greeks and Romans took it. But the Greeks and Romans understood they could only go to certain cataracts and they had to stop. Because when they crossed over certain cataracts, they had to fight the Nubians. And they did fight the Nubians, and Nubians beat their butt every time. So they made treaties with them. The Khan, the Fulani, Hausa, all of them began to go to the south. And this is where they got together and stayed down to the south. And then in time, when the Exodus came, all of them began to go now to West Africa and to Central Africa. That's how this came about, brothers and sisters. So as is described here, but it was in the Semites, the state in the Lower Egypt mixed with the Greeks, the Futafula mixed with the Greeks a lot. They mixed a lot with the Greeks, brothers and sisters. We can't deny this history. This is why the people look like me, and other Fulani people. We have differences, but we're still Africans. It's just we stayed. And again, we surmise that the reason why we stayed to the north is because we had our cattle there. See, and we were rich. And we were not being pestered and so forth and so on because we had cattle. And everybody depends on the cattle and milk in a hot, arid climate like Egypt. It's dry. But we had valleys of, sweet grass, water, because you have the Nile, and the Futafula community was wealthy. You look at the murals I showed you here. I still have them here, but I don't want to take up time. I want to kind of close earlier today. And I showed you the murals of all the Fulani people, showing them they're an integral part of Kemet. But they stayed and mixed with the Greeks and the Romans. The Greeks and Romans took the Futafula woman, and they mated with them. And this is where the Fulani people look like my mom. I looked at my grandma. I told you many stories about them. They had long hair almost down to the ground. I told you how their features, I never could understand it because I'm looking at my dad. My dad, has the Yoruba and Igbo blood. He was black, much darker than me. And my grandmother was too. And I see my uncles. So when I go on my dad's side down in the southern part of the United States, I used to ask my mom, and they say, hey, Mom, who are these kind of people? Because I was born in LA. I didn't see black people like this. When I got to the South, see people jet black, I complained because I'm a 5-year-old little boy. I'm looking at these people. I said, they're my relatives. Why do they look like this? When we went to the north in Indiana on my mom's side, I seen them much lighter than me. I would complain and say, well, whoa, wait a minute. Why do they look like this? Why were their hair straight? You know what I mean? So I couldn't win, brothers and sisters. But this is my heritage. But I'm explaining to you as a 5-year-old boy, and I used to get hit across the head. You know how in those days because nowadays you can't touch your children in the United States. In those days, you could touch your children. You could beat them with a belt or slap across the head. And I got many slaps because I used to show out. Like we go to visit our relatives, and I just look at them stare. I was a 5-year-old boy, so you can imagine. But this is, they stayed and mixed. That's what produced the Fulani people. And this is what explains, again, the characteristics that have dumbfounded the scientists. Sheikh Diop figured it out because he said because he looked at the full community, and he began to do the accessing of the documents. He began to find things that he knew it was related, and we had the words Ka and Ba. Ka and Ba, brothers and sisters, is related to the Futufoli language. And then we had the pharaoh by the name of Ka. See, he took the name Ka, and then we've known the burials to be Kara. So I'm hoping my Fulani brothers who speak the dialect will chime in on this, because I can't speak the Fulani dialect. I can't speak. I want to learn Messina. I have some Pular, but not enough yet. But I have a lot more Hausa. But of course, I have more Arabic than anything else. But my brothers can chime in on this, because the Ka and Ba, I see this a lot in, as I'm learning the Pular. I see Ka and Ba. I see this, and even in Hausa as well, and in Wolof as well. So I'm just curious about this. We got to see what we got here. I read Endless Board. Yeah, that's much later in art Arabic. Yeah, see, brother, that's way, yes, Henry. How you doing, my dear brother? That's much later, because you're talking about now the 7 AD on up. And then, crossing the 1000s again, too. The 1000s, the Futuful brothers went back into Andalus to fight again to preserve Islam in Andalus. So I told you, if you looked at my program here, I had, they said it was about a year ago, I had about Andalus. I explained that. I told about what happened when the Fulani, the Bambara, the Sinike, the Hapular, there was a Wolof. There's a whole bunch from this Takrur region, northern Senegal, which is on the tip of Senegal and Mauritania, as we understand today. When they went, they came in, especially under Tariq ibn Zayed. Remember, I told you about him, the first to conquer Andalus. They made it with the Spanish women. I gave you this proof about that with pictures and other proofs about that. So I covered that in another segment, which is about a year ago, called Al-Andalus. You can pull it up. I think I did 3 segments on this, but you can pull that up. I talk extensively about the mixing that happened. See, and are people, they call Melungeons. You cannot have Melungeon without the Fulani factor in it, because the Fulani people took many of the Spanish girls as concubines and wives, and we mixed a lot. Some were recorded to have 100 children. See, and some had 50. Some, they said, even had 100 Spanish concubines. In those days, the brothers were strong and they were busy. When they weren't fighting, they were mating. As my teacher told me in Ghana, he said it was man's nature to eat and mate. They did this, and they had Spanish women to do it with. And they created a whole race of people called Melungeons. But that's much later. Now we're talking about 2,000, about approximately 2,500 to 3,000 years before. We're talking about this issue here in Kempt. It led to civil war with the Arabs in Iberia. Yes, brother, but today I recovered this. I covered this. You got to go back to my tape. I covered this last year in Andalus. Today we're concentrating on Kempt, about how the Yoruba people got their name, what happened to the Fulani people, how the Fulani people became the Fulani people as we understand it today, why they have many lighter complexions, why our features are totally different, why we have more hair, why our sisters look different than the other sisters from West Africa. I'm trying to give that evidence today. I've already talked about this case about Andalus, which happened 250 years after the fact. King David's Fulani, his name was original King Dafi after. Yes. Remember we talked about this when the Khan people came. I think they were the first the second wave of Black Africans that came into Andalus, to Kemp, no doubt. But remember last couple of days ago, I talked about who were these original Aborigine Black people there. We don't know who they are. It's them who developed the Meshneter, the original language of Egypt, Kemp. The Akan came, and remember, if you saw I would urge you to go back, my brothers and sisters, to go back to the program I just did. I showed you hieroglyphics. I showed you the Meshneter, how the original Black Africans who were there in Kemp had it, which was no vowels. I gave the proof about that. And then when the Akan and the Ga, the Ewe people, the Hausa people, and all the others, Fulani, Wolof, all of us begin to come into Egypt, ancient Kemp, we changed the hieroglyphics to add the vowels to it. That's right. See, so this is, more proof. Again, talking about this issue about the names and so forth. Each dynasty had its own. Each dynasty had its own. The Hausa, when they had this, they added their language to it. And this is why we have all of this. Now I've given you this kind of proof, brothers and sisters, to help you, to arm you with the aspect of this. And we got here, the Futufu language was extensively used in about the 18th dynasty. This is what I was trying to explain to you, brothers and sisters, again, before the reign of Akhenaten. When he came in, remember, it's Akhenaten. When he came in, then he brought back Tawheed, oneness of God. Okay, oneness. All idol worshiping was finished. What the Fulani were worshiping at the time before Akhenaten took over was form of polytheism, because they had different things. But they had an interesting concept, brothers and sisters, for the Fulani people who may look at this in the future. You do your research on this. There's no doubt Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the doggone Fulani people, House people, all of us, he gave us something. Because we have some things here that, when you think about this, the Fulani people, the Wolof, the Siri people, we have this concept of Ka, meaning the death, and then Ba, meaning that the soul goes up into the seven heavens. There it meets up with the Ba. The doggone people went further by saying that the Ka and Ba want the soul united in the inner space. You're off the earth now. You're dead. When your soul is free, your soul runs up into the seven heavens. The doggone said that the soul runs to the Siri. Remember the Siri, the Sirius solar system, which I had a class on this 3 months ago. So remember that. And remember, I told you the doggone people used the Fulani dialect, the Messina dialect, to chart the space. And the doggone people said that the Ka and Ba, when they united in inner space, the soul rests in Cyrus C, which they call Sigi Po in the Fulani dialect, the Messina Bofode dialect. This is very interesting. Now, what I'm talking about, brothers and sisters, today is way our people worship way before Islam. So I don't want somebody coming back to me saying I'm trying to promote polytheism. I'm not. I'm talking about history here. I don't want any of my brothers to misinterpret what's happening here. I'm talking about history. We had history before Islam came. I'm giving you that now. We were in and out of Tawheed. But I'm giving you this because I want you to understand, again, brothers and sisters, about this. There's more to this, but I'm abbreviating it for brevity for time, because this is important. The Ka and Ba was used by the Fulani people and the Wolof people as well, and the Siri people who were there in Kemp. When the Fulani people took charge, when they became the pharaohs and rulers of Kemp, the most powerful of the Fulanis who ruled at the time, the late 17th dynasty to the 18th, before Akhenaten, right? Pharaoh Ka was his name. See, And so they now changed the concept of religion, of religious concepts. So I gave that to you. This is why you see the name Bari among many Fulani people. Bari comes from the Ka and Ba combination, and also Ka and Ra. That's another aspect too that they incorporated to use the old, remember Ra, the sun, remember, and Subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created the sun. This is what is not the worship of the sun, but creating the sun. They call Ra, right? The Fulani people took that aspect of it as well and added to that. So we have people by the name Bari. That's right, brothers and sisters. I get to you guys here in a minute. Just hold it for 1 second. The name Bari. Okay, yeah. This name here, brothers and sisters, we have. I looked in many documents of history. I've seen many of the Fotofola Emirates. I found people with the name Bari. I found, sultans with the last name or the first name Bari. And, and I used to, I was, dumbfounded. So why is that? Again, I'm hoping my Fulani brothers will see this and begin to chime in on the comments in the future if they're not here now to help us understand this. Because again, the Ka and Ba and Bari is derivative of that. It's a religious concept. Now, of course, the Fulani today are Muslims. We understand that. And that time they were polytheists, but they believed in one supreme being, but they also had minor gods. So the concept of the soul is what, they had advanced knowledge of this. And so now you understand what we're talking about here. Okay, we have King David. I don't know about that, my dear brother, because we have to look at the King's list. And the King's list, we have to look at the Exodus, which I'll be covering in the next episodes. The King's list is complex. Excuse me, not the King's list, but the Exodus is very complex. I don't want to try it now. I'm going to give you that when that comes sometime next week. Inshallah ta'ala, I shall talk about the Exodus, because Exodus is very, very, very complicated. It's not as simple as what you find in the Bible. The Bible's got a lot of things wrong about the Exodus, because we have a plethora of documents. So which of the Exodus is true? I'll get into that. See, I'll get into that part. But we have coverages of King David. We have coverages of Solomon and Yusuf, of Joseph, as you understand in English. All of that is discussed in there. But mainly the main focus of the Exodus is Moses or Musa. And I gave you the names that in the hieroglyphics that he had him under. Except the Arabic, I gave you the Arabic Musa because it's modern times. But I gave you all the names in Medineher, the name they had, MS, remember? MS, and so forth and so on. So this is, again, brothers and sisters, we'll get into this. The Fulanis are related to Iwis and Khans have, yes, there's brothers, West Africa. That's why, if all of us, I took my DNA, if all the brothers, I don't care if you're sitting in the Gambia or Senegal, or if you're in Sierra Leone, when you do your DNA, you think it's going to only show Mende and that's all? And you Fulani, you think that only Fulani will show? No, it's not. You'll find just about quite a few of ethnic groups in your bloodline. The West Africans are unique because we descended from ancient Egypt and we left. I showed you the pictures again, okay, of the communities, the society. I showed you these pictures and so forth and so on of the what is called the Lower Egypt, of the black people who now settled there because they didn't want to live among the Greeks. See, and so you have different shades of color of people, and you have different looks of people. So the black people start to mix there. That's why the Fulani, there's no such thing as 100% Fulani. There's no such thing as a brother who's a Fanti there in Ghana. In Ghana, He is not 100%. Because if all of us do our DNA, you're going to find Fulani blood in just about everybody. You're going to find Hausa blood. You're going to find Mende and Mendinka. You're not going to be able to avoid that. See, and that's why I say there's no difference between the West African and the Egyptian, because you left Egypt, and when we left, it wasn't Hausa who went by himself and he set up his own shop. No, we all left. But yes, because Africa's so big, our communities began to what? Go. But we still stayed in communities because we still lived together and camped, right? So when we came across West Africa, we did the same thing. This is why when you take the DNA of all the brothers coming from Nigeria, all the way across the coastal states up to Senegal, and even in Mauritania, you'll find most Black Africans, West Africa, you're going to have just about every type of bloodline in your blood. But you'll be more predominantly maybe Songhai, but you'll find Fulani, you'll find Sinike there, you'll find Wolof, the brothers in Nigeria. You're not going to be all only Fulani or Igbo or Yoruba. You're going to show a mixture because they mixed a lot together in cultures and everything. See? So this is why I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, this is a very interesting concept, because the Fulani people, I'm talking about what they believed before Islam, 2,500 years before that. And I give you now the proof to suggest strongly that the Fulani people, why they look so different. Now I gave you the answer. I gave you an answer there. And this is what they believe. This is why in the Fulfulde dialect, you see ka and ba a lot. Ka, ba, a lot. Even in Hausa, somewhat. But in Fulani, you find ka, ba. Now you understand our names came from religious aspect, what the Fulani people believed 2,500 years before. And it was very interesting. The Fulani people believed, again, I'm recapping for brothers that showed up now. The Fulani people at that time, around the 17th to the 18th dynasties, we had a pharaoh by the name of Ka, and we had other Fulani pharaohs. They now changed the religion to fit what they believe. And the Fulani people believe at one time when you die, they call it Ka. And they believe that the soul went into the inner space, and they matched up with Ba. This is why we have people by the name of Bari, Diallo, and other names, Fulani traditional names, right? Now you understand where it's coming from. And there's more aspects to this, but for brevity, I just give you a little bit. Do you do your research on this? And anybody who wants to need documentation, please get a hold of me. I can help you with that so you can get the books if you have time to read, because these books are lengthy. Some are 300 pages, some are 500, but it's a lot of research. And the doggone people who are closely related to the Fulani people, a lot, who they use our language, they said that Ka and Ba met into the seven heavens, but the soul went to rest in the Sirius solar system in what is called Sigi Po, which again is Messina dialect. Messina Fulfulde dialect of Mali, because that's where the doggone people, and they said that your souls rested there, which coincides a lot with Islam, because we have seven heavens, and our Prophet ﷺ have gave us some examples about where, about the seven heavens and so forth and so on. Now you get this picture and you understand what's going on. And I also want to explain to our brothers and sisters that why the Fulani people look the way they look is because if you look at this map here, you see the ocean, the Mediterranean is in the blue over at the top. Over here to your right, of course, is the Red Sea, and now it's the Suez Canal, they call it, but it was the Red Sea at that time. And you look at the top, that's the Mediterranean. When the Greeks came, they came into the Egypt. The black people, as you saw that mirror I gave you, begin to go south, because they couldn't get along with the Greeks. They fought, they were bitter enemies. They started to go further south. But the Fulani people stayed with their cattle to the north, and they mixed with the Greeks and the Romans. That's why the Fulani people have these differences in color, hair textures, and so forth and so on. When they left Kempt to come to West Africa, they had these body features and colors and hair textures still to this day. Now you understand where it came from. Now I'm hoping we can settle that, because many people want to know why the Fulani people look the way they look. Now you understand why. The Wolof, the Jolof, the Ga, the Akan, the Asante people, the Mendinka, Mende, Igbo, Tiv, all of them went down to the south and preserved their heritages and color and their physical characteristics. The Fulani didn't. The Fulani stayed to the north, mend their cattle. They were wealthy. And so when the Greeks came, the Greeks said, why would the Greeks destroy them? Because the Greeks came, it's a hot, arid climate. The Fulani people had cattle where he had milk and so forth and so on, right from the cattle. So they were a valuable asset to the Romans. The Romans took Fulani women in their beds and they began to mate. And now we produce the Fulani people as we see today, why they look the way they look. Now this is the genesis of it. And I'm hoping that it help us to understand, even me as a Fulani person and other Fulani people, how we got this, and we got it out of Egypt. We're not Europeans, even though we mix with the Europeans, but we're not. Our genotype is not. Now, modern day, because of the Europeans, we'll carry the R series because of the Y, for the man chromosomes. But we have mixed a lot, and this is why we have this look. And I'm hoping that helps the brothers and sisters to understand some parts, and we can debate this a lot. And let me see what our brothers got to say here. Walaikum salam, my dear brother. Thank you for showing up. Yeah, I'm hoping you heard some of this. You can go back and hear this again. I heard that most of Nigeria are culturally Fulani, but not definitely necessarily because of the. Yes, that's true. Most of West Africa, you have a lot of this, my dear brother. You're right. Look at the doggone people of Mali. They speak a different language, but they adopted the Fulani language. It's funny, isn't it? They kept the Messina for 40 dialect, and they used that to chart the space. So we have a lot of people who took, because why? The Fulani people on and off always seem to control vast areas of West Africa. No doubt, even in the Islamic period, you can't get past that. A lot of people are upset about that, but it's true. And so the cultural traits of the Fulani rubbed off on all of the ethnic groups. This is why I'm saying today that any West African who claims he's 100% Akan, he's a liar, because you are not. All the West Africans, me, you, all of us brothers who from West Africa, who live in West Africa, are West Africans. If you do your DNA, you're going to find Seniki in there. You're going to find Hausa and Mende. You're going to find Fulani. You're going to find Hausa. You're going to find Tiv and Igbo. You're going to find Ewe. You're going to find different ethnic groups in your bloodline. You're not be pure Fulani if you're in West Africa. You're not be pure Hausa. This is why the fighting between the ethnic groups is silly, because the Hausa is Fulani. The Fulani is Hausa. The Fulani are Yoruba as well. Yoruba fights the Fulani, but the Yoruba are Fulani also, because he's got Fulani heritage. When you go to the west, into the corridor, you get the Mendinka. The Mendinka mad with the Fulani, but the Fulani and Mendinka have each other's bloodline. So that's why the West Africans fighting against one another, we're mixed up. We have each other's bloodline. You see what I mean? See, so this, hopefully this for those, they don't have ethnic groups or that kind of far fetched through, because no Fulani is pure. Well, yes, but the on the woman's side we have the LO series. The Fulani, because of the mixture, they may have others. They have other designations, but they have. If I remember right, too, I saw it the other day. I saw it the other day, brothers and sisters. I can't. Where was that? I saw the Fulani brothers. They had a EM. Let me see if I can find that. I saw these brothers that had it. Okay, here. I can't remember which one. It was EM. I don't. This chart is not going to give you all the West Africans. They don't give the full here. But I saw the other day it was EM. Now this is the prototype. Because of mixing, we know it changed. But the Fulani people are Africans. They're not Europeans. They're not Asians. They're not, whatever. Yes, they mix with the European people in Messer 2,000, 5,000 years, 2,500 years ago. Yes, 3,000 years, they mix with them. But they still have the retaining some of the basic premises of these E series in their bloodline, and also the L series, which is on the woman's side, like my mom. My mom was 50% Fulani, 25% Amazigh. And then she had Mende and Mendinka and Capelli as well. See, on my mom's side. So, and I'm Khan. My name is so close my nickname that yes. See, again, because of all of the mixtures, if there's going to be Fulani people who are going to differ from me, because I know I have many Fulani people who don't want to claim African. They want to say that they are European or Turkish or something like this because the way they look. And we have people like the Somali people, in Somalia and to the east, Djibouti, all of them say they're not black people. They're not even Africans. We have this type of mentality among a lot of us. I saw some programs on YouTube where they were talking about in the United States, the Somali people say, don't call me black because I'm not black. I've heard all of this, and we've had this type of thing. And we have Fulani people who also are screaming out the same thing. I saw this beautiful Fulani sister when she was a young girl. She was like maybe 14, 15 years old. They asked her a question about her heritage. She said Europe. So we start to have this as though they're not African. They are African. Because again, the proof shows we came out of Egypt. There's no doubt about that, brothers and sisters, because we go back to the this, the dynasties of the late 17th dynasty, the 17th dynasty to the early 18th dynasty. The Fulani people were actually in charge of Kemet, and it was their religious beliefs that was permeating through the land because they were in charge now. This is where we came up with this Ka and Ba. This came out of the prototype Fulani dialect that was spoken 3,000 years ago. And this is the belief. Ka, meaning that you die. When they're talking about now we're talking about when we die. And then the Ba, we have many people who have the name Bari, right? And we have named Diallo. Those names came out from the religious beliefs of our ancestors at that time. And as you see here, Bari derives from this religious concept used by the ancient Fotofola. It's true. Ka, Ba, Ra. They came. And Ba, Ri, meaning, again, coming, the souls united. This is old belief. But now we know that the Fotofola are Muslims. We know this. But this is something I wanted to get into so you can have this and do your research. The pharaoh's name was Ka. His name was Ka. And the burial of the Fulani people and what they called it at that time, again, was Katara. That's why I asked for my brothers who speak the Fulfulde dialects, if the Messina or Pular or any of the dialects, Sudani, whatever the dialect is, you chime in on this in the comments because I don't speak the full Fulfulde dialects. I have working knowledge of it, but I don't know it good yet. So you can chime on this. But we see in our grammar Ka and Ba a lot, don't we? Now you understand where that's coming from. So I gave you this evidence, brothers and sisters. So, you guys can run with that and look at it. Here we go. Right. Some are claiming to be Arab over Africa. Yes. And because of, yes. It's a sad epitaph. When I saw this beautiful sister on YouTube, and she would have when she married an African American, and I saw her mother, and she was very racist, towards an African American, and and the girl explained that they don't believe that they're they're black, but they're not black. And I wrote in a comment, I said, you know, it's funny you say that. But when the Somali people tried to escape persecution in Somalia, right? They went to Asia. They went to South Korea and they went to Indonesia. The Indonesians and the Koreans have a name for black people. That's what they called them. So if the Somali people come over and try to tell the Indonesian they're not black, they're going to start looking at them because they called them a name. They had a name for them, from meaning black people. I put that comment there. I said, oh, yeah? So you're not black. I said, you look like many of my people in my family. So what are you talking about? You're not black. You're not African either. But when you went to Asia, if you went to Asia and you start telling them that you're white, they're gonna laugh at you because they called you a term that they use for black people. And in South Korea too. Matter of fact, there's a lot of YouTube about Somali people over there, all the discrimination against them over there in South Korea and Indonesia, which they regard them as black. Food for thought, brothers and sisters. Food for thought, you know. So anyway, as our brother said here, this is a sad epithet, no doubt. It's sad epithet, and I hate to see this because it's not right. Now, Islamically, I have to say this. Our Prophet, he made a comment when a Sahaba asked him a question about who was Arab. He said the definition that he gave Arab was not the color of the skin or the hair texture or how tall or how black you were. The concept for him was the speaking from the tongue, the lisan, from the mouth, okay, from the tongue, right? If you spoke Arabic, you speak Arabic, then you Arab, meaning in a sense, yes, your DNA is Ghanaian, your DNA is Fulani, your DNA is Hausa. But the Prophet ﷺ was talking about the lisan, the dialect speaking. See, so that adds to this as well. This is why in the Islamic circles, you have to be very careful about racial designations, because a man from Senegal who's 3 times darker than me is classified as Arab, and even in the Arab League. You look at the Arab League, brothers and sisters, and look at their bylaws and see their definition of Arab. You'd be surprised to see how many black Africans that are there in that. You see that. See, but we have misunderstood this, and look at Sudan. We have Fulani people who've been there for generations now, for 200 years, right? They call Fulani Arabs. It sounds funny, don't it? But they call Fulani Arabs. They speak Arabic, but they speak a Sudanese Fulani dialect as well. See, Sudan is all mixed up. So we have these dynamics, brothers and sisters, and it's sad. But I wanted to give you something like Sudan, majority speak. Yes, because it's an Arab speaking culture where you have black Africans who have adopted the Arabic culture, no doubt. But we have Fulani people. This is why you have the fighting going on in Sudan today, the RSF. The RSF are descended from Fulani migrants. I mean, not migrants. Mujahideen soldiers who left Usman and Fodio. Remember the Sokoto Caliphate, right? Now they have settled everything. They went into jihad to support their Sudanese brothers. They stayed there, married, and died in Sudan. That's why we had what is called the RSF. The RSF have their nucleus, which is Fulani. This is why the government forces tell the RSF, you're not real Fulani. Your daddy is, you're not real Sudani. You're not real Arab. Your daddy is Fulani. See, and this is the contention. The fighting is going on in Sudan. I was there in Sudan. I saw how crazy it was. I told you, you saw my program. It was a crazy thing. You can't marry a certain girl over here. Everybody's black. It's funny. Everybody's black, okay? But you can't, it's almost like a black-white thing, but it's not because everybody's black. And you see, you can't marry this girl over here because she's this ethnic group. I can only marry the girl from over this ethnic group. It was crazy, when I was there. Very, very crazy in that. But, back to the issue at hand, I'm getting ready to close here. Now you have the basis, brothers and sisters, to do your research to understand what happened in this time in the 17th and 18th dynasties. The Fulani people were running the show at this time. I gave you also the proof about the Yoruba, how we got the Yoruba people. For those who showed up late, I showed you here the connection from the linguistics. If you, my black brothers and sisters, you want to defeat the racists, you use the linguistics. Don't use the pictures, because the pictures of murals can be changed. The Tubab has changed everything around here to make the people all European, but they can never defeat the linguistics. See, that's the part they cannot defeat. And how we got the Yoruba people were in Egypt. And this is how we have the similarities in names. We have all of this. We have now, and I'm giving you how this, you come back and review this again, how the Yoruba people became Yoruba, how their name came about. It was derived in ancient Egypt. See, so this is how we got the Yoruba people, and this is the documentation showing our experts how they talk about this and how the Yoruba people came to be Yoruba. And they derived it from ancient Egypt. See, so these are some of the things, brothers and sisters, again, that shows you what's going on. Then we go here to the Fulani side. Here we have Senegal. Senegal, we have the mixture of the Mandinka, we have and the Fulani and the Wolof. And during their times when they were running the show, they used their dialect. And this is what they found in hieroglyphics. Look at the names. To your left is the Medu the Egyptian language spoken 2,500, 3,000 years ago. And the Fulani, Wolof, also Syria is in this as well. And you look at the names, they're almost practically the same. Again, showing that we were there in ancient Egypt, and we are part of the landscape there. And this is another part of this, brothers and sisters, to show you the Phototoro, again, showing you the dialects, again, of the ancient Egyptian to your left here, and then the Fotofola dialects, along with you see the Ka there. See there, he's talking about this Ka. Ka was a big factor in the names of the Fulani people at the time in the 17th and the 18th dynasties, brothers and sisters. You have many people that had the name Ka, Yahya, Ka, Mohammed, or whatever the situation in their names. They didn't have Arabic at the time. I'm just giving you an example of how Ka was used for everything, because that's the religious belief. So now you can get this proof, and now you have it to show you what's going on. And they have done the extensive research. This is why I keep saying that Egypt is ours. I gave you now the Yoruba people, how they descended from the ancient Egyptians out of there, how the Yoruba people got their name. They got it in ancient Egypt. How the Fulani people, how did they became the people we understand them? Because they mixed with the Romans and the Greeks. And when the Fulani people, they never left. Again, brothers and sisters, remember, as you heard me say, when all the black people started going to the south to avoid the Romans and the Greeks, right? They started to go back into the south to Nubia, where they could find protection from the Romans and the Greeks, because Romans and Greeks had now conquered a great portion of Egypt, as we understood at Kemp at that time. The Fulani people stayed to the north, and they mixed. And this is why the Fulani have these type of features and dialects and so forth and so on. And so now I'm starting to get comments here from people, but they're not writing here. They're writing somewhere else. I think these are provocateurs, because they're trying to take me away from the program, but I'm not going to answer. They wrote something else. Why don't they come to the show to write? But you know how that is. Okay. And so again, the connection of the Yoruba people, I'm giving you this again for you to go back. You guys go back over this tape again, brothers and sisters, and go back to find this evidence about the Yoruba people. I'm just giving you two. I'm going to cover some other ethnic groups, maybe inshallah, to show the connection between Mendi and Mendinka, how you're connected to ancient Egypt and names. Because you got to understand, in the 31 dynasties, The Hausa had their time. The Yoruba had their time. The Fulani people had their time. See, we all had our time in there. And this is why we have now, we've found the documents, we have the hieroglyphics, and each one of us run and controlled the landscape of what we call Kemt. And another thing too, brothers, when I get ready to close, you know how Egypt got its name? It came out of the Latin called Egypticus, and it's stuck. So Egypt is not even an African name. See, it's Egypticus is from the Greeks. That's what they called the land. But we had different names in the African dialects. See, the dogs out here fighting, brothers. If you can hear, the dogs are always staying around here. You heard my story about with the dogs here. They go with me to the masjid in the mornings, but they stay around here because I feed them, give them water, and give them love. So they have their conflicts. You can imagine, and they're having conflicts out here right now. That's why you can hear them barking and arguing with one another out here. So I've given you this proof here, and so forth and so on, to help you in the destination. And now you understand how we got the Yoruba people, and I told you about the Fulani people. So I hope that's got you going, so you guys can start to do this. Yeah, I'll be back inshallah. Yeah, my dear brother, I'll be covering this. You're welcome always, my dear brother, and I'll be covering more about this here, pretty soon, inshallah ta'ala. But I wanted to cover this so you can get this information to prove to you that the Fulani people came out from Egypt. And why the Fulani people look the way they look is because they mixed with the Romans and the Greeks. I showed you the proof now, the ancient religion that the Fulani people were practicing at the time. And the Ka and Ba is an integral part of the Fulani dialects. I don't care if it's Messina, or if it's Pular, or if it's a Sudani Fulfulde dialect. It doesn't make a difference. See, all of them is interconnected. And Ka Ba is famous. Badari names, the Fulani names. Also in the mix in there, and I didn't cover the part, but Diallo, this in there. It gives you how this name Diallo was formed. It gives it. So, but for abbreviation, I didn't want to get into that, to go deeper into this. And you can see this here. I'm giving you the Fotofola dialects and so forth and so on, how we have the relationship in the languages. And these are old documents that were written about the region and how they uncovered the hieroglyphics and so forth and so on. And that's why I'm hoping my brothers who speak the Fulfulde dialect, they chime in on this, because here you can give more insight than I can, because I don't speak the dialect very well. Especially I'm learning Pular, but I don't speak it good enough yet. But I know that I see Ka and Ba a lot in the grammar of the Fulfulde dialect. Now I understand where it comes from. Now I kind of get it and whatnot. And the Romans and Greeks look like Berbers and Arabs. No, maybe you talk about modern times, but in ancient times, if you look at my programs, we can't use the word Berber, because Berber is like calling them the M word. The Amazigh is what they call themselves. The Romans were white, bottom line. The Amazigh were black. Okay, so and they turned to be white in the 1800s again, and the same formula as they did 2,000 years ago. When they had conflicts, the black people always went to the south. It's funny, isn't it? In Egypt, in ancient Egypt, they did the same thing. When the Greeks and Romans came in, what did they do, brothers and sisters? They did the same thing. They went to, and they went where? To the south. The Greeks came in their boats at the top here, and they started coming to invade the country. The brothers went to the south to get away from them. See, the only ones who stayed basically up there were the Fulani people. It's not comical. I don't mean it that way, but I'm just trying to give you what happened. So there's a difference. The Romans and Greeks, maybe in modern times today, they may look like this. But my advice, all of you brothers and sisters, the Amazigh people I know, because I live in Morocco, I get Amazigh blood. Don't call them Berber, because Berber is a very derogatory. It's like being called the N-word. It's very derogatory, because the Europeans coined that term meaning barbarian. And The Moroccans don't like this term either, to be called that. So there's a big, thing about that. But you can understand this, where they're coming from. But the Greeks and Romans are totally different people, because if you look, I'll give you this. Looks more like Iron Persian than white. I don't want to get in that, because you're talking about modern times versus because how do you get past this? Let me give you some evidence here, okay, for our dear brother here, Herodias. How do you explain that? Herodias went from ancient Egypt all the way across into Persia. And this is what he said the people look like, all the way up there. So that's why I try to say, my dear brother Kwesi, you have to understand something about the history. Don't look at the people today. This happened way back. You're talking about 440 years before Jesus ﷺ was even born. You're talking about over 3,000 years ago, when Herodias was there. This is what he said: the Chaldeans, and the Egyptians, and the Ethiopians, all that they had black skin. And if you read his book called Histories, he talked about the people in Iran at that time when he was there. He said they were black, but their hair was wavy. See, this is what he said. He said their hair was wavy. So now you can understand. This is why I said, don't look at the modern day people today and equate that to 3,500 years, because how do you get past Herodias? Herodias was there. And he talks about it in his book. He described them as black. As you can see here, it's in his book. He wrote a good history of what he saw. So that's why I said we have to look at the evidence, and we have to marry up the evidence that what we have. And we have to be very careful when we look at today, and we look at the Arab, who you see him is white skinned in the stores in the United States. He's white skinned. He looked just like Europeans. And you say, well, this is their history. No, it's not. They are later arrivals. They weren't white from the beginning, brothers and sisters, because you look at Al-Jahiz's book that was written 100 years removed from a prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam. He talked about the region himself too. He talked about even the heritage of many of the Sahaba. He described them as being black. See, so the Greeks look like Turkey people. You know what? I think you know what? You keep going on you keep going to the same topic here, my dear brother. I don't. Yeah, okay. I think he's not a brother. I think he's a two-bob portraying himself. He's coming with the same thing. I keep telling him this. He brings something else. I don't have time to. I gave him enough time, and I have to run him out, because now he's talking about silly stuff. He don't look at the evidence. He keep talking about people look like so and so. He keeps talking about the same people look like. We're not talking about the modern times. We're talking about ancient Kemet. We're talking about 3,500 years ago. I gave this brother, he's not a brother, I think it's a two-bob provocateur. I gave him evidence who man was there over 3,000 years ago. He kept ignoring that. He didn't care. He said, well, look, they look like this. Yes, in modern times, they do. Look at the Amazigh people. They're white. But these dogs really out here fighting a lot. Boy, they really are fighting. Okay, no difference between ancient Egyptians and West Africans. Yeah. The only one I would say the West Africans happen to be the Semite, while they're the Semite and Ham. Those terms, brother, they're more linguistics. They're more created by the Tuba who gave us, because he wanted to make a difference between black people by trying to say, because you're darker than me, he'll say you are black, but you are more of the Hamitic people, or you're lighter skinned, and so you more Semitic. They try to divide us. The Semitic and Hamitic is more of a language thing. See, so don't go too much by that. But you have the first part right. The Egyptians, West Africa are the same, because you look again at the bloodline and the DNA, which I present. If you look at my classes, I give my talks. Gave you proof about the genotypes of the ancient Egyptians and the West Africans. We are the same people. Now I gave you evidence. I gave you two groups: the Fulani people and the Yoruba people. How did they come about in ancient Egypt? I gave you that proof to show you again that we are the ancient Egyptians. See, so this is what again. Don't look makes opposite agree. They look like yes, but again, that's modern times. This is the modern times. What about the ancient times? See, I keep going, trying to get brothers to go back. We're talking about the ancient times. We're not talking about today, because today you can't go by that. Because today the Arabs, all through Jazeera Arab, they look white. Look at the Amazigh, who you call Berber, which they don't like the term. Majority, you look at Morocco, I live here, I've been here 2 decades. You go to the northern part, you see people, some of them are very fair. When you go to the southern part, they look like me and you and other West Africans. Okay, variety of different shades, hair textures, and so forth, and they're black. See, when you go to the north, they're white. So we can't go by today. I'm trying to give you evidence about West Africans, what it was, who are they related to the ancient Egyptians. They are. All the mixtures is going on with the whites and so forth and so on. Yes, we know this is modern time, no doubt. See, but I wanted to tie in Kemp, because they try to say that Kemp, ancient Egypt, is not ours. They said it's European, and I proved that's not the case. It's not the Europeans, it's us. It was us. Yes, they invaded. Yes, they came to conquer. Yes, they colonized. No doubt they did this. We know that. But I showed you the murals that the ancient Egyptians used to show they were in the South. And it showed a conglomeration of different black people. Not only Egyptians, there were Nubians and other black people, immigrants in those murals. And that shows now why I gave you, when each one took over the dynasties. When the Fulani had it, they used Ka and Ba, just about in everything. The name, you had the Ka in it. And Ba, you have people by the name Bahri, coming from, because of religion. Okay, Diallo, that came later, but that derived from the religious concepts of the Fulani people in the 7th and 18th dynasties, right? And I gave that evidence to show you what happened. Kara was used by the Fulani people to designate, talking about the people put in the graves and for death. And the Ka means the time of death, and Ba is the soul that's resting, the stage that goes up into the heavens, right? And then it marries up with the Ka, and this is what they did. The Dogon even went further by saying Ka and Ba met up in the 7 heavens, and then their soul rested in a solar system they call Sirius C, which they call Sigi Po and the Messina dialect. All of this, brothers and sisters, is ancient Egypt, and what happened there, and what our brothers worship and how they worship, and so forth and so on. I'm giving you that history for your edification, so you can understand who you are as Yoruba. And I didn't cover the Igbo people, because we have all of these languages that they took over the dynasties. And when the Yoruba ran the show, their religious concepts took reign in the land. When the Hausa took it, I told you what the Hausa people did. When the Hausa kings of the pharaohs of Egypt, when they were running it, they put a insignia on their doors. They call it sarek, but in the Hausa language, sariki. We know this meaning king, but this means the king's chambers, the king's house. See, the Fulani people, when they had it, everything was designated by what they believed, by the name Ka and Ba. So you have people with names Ka Yahya, Ka Bahri, Ka, Ahmed. Those Arabic names. But I'm just giving you the example when the Fulani, and they use the word Ka a lot, and the word Ba. This is in the dialect and it's part of the religion. So I gave you all this evidence, brothers and sisters, and I'm hoping that, I'm going to give it a close here because I got to go pray. And I'm hoping that you get something out of this, brothers and sisters. Again, I give you all this information because I want you to have this kind of education and so forth, so you can do your research, and that way you can kind of answer questions. And again, don't look at what you see today. We're talking about ancient Egypt. Even if you look at modern Egypt today, you see people very white-skinned that look like Europeans. But when you go to the South, you find black people that look like me and you. Okay? So don't go by that. And what I'm trying to do is show you how you can defeat the Egyptologists that we have today who are racist, who will not give any doubt about any black people being in Egypt. They will not. But when you touch them on the linguistics, that trumps them every time. And when you ask what language they speak, and then how is it the West African dialects is related to, and I'll put it in here again for your, this is the excuse me, netter, okay? And this equals West African dialects. Okay, I'll put it here for you guys. This equals West African languages today. Okay. The ancient Egyptian languages, brothers and sisters, is called Mehunetter. This is how it's written in hieroglyph. You saw my class the other day. Now I gave you proof. I just gave you the last 2 weeks, I gave you 4 ethnic groups out of West Africa. I gave you the Akan and Ga from Ghana, right? I gave their languages when they were running Egypt. Now I gave you the Yoruba and I gave you the Fulani when they were running Egypt. I gave you their influences on the language. That's 4 groups, West Africans. See, so the ancient look more like, you know what, these provocateurs are coming in here and everything. They're trying to play games because this is the only way they can play their because they control, the Tubac controls YouTube, so they can do this type of thing here and whatnot, and play games like this by running. They don't, you know, these guys, they get, and I get, you'd be surprised some of the stuff I get in my email, and even they come even into my studio thing, and they write some of the stupidest things. They try to get you to provoke you, and they don't come up with anything evidence. They only say things like this one told me the other day about the map. He said, you shouldn't use this map. You should use a real map. And he said, you need to learn. He started telling me all this stuff. So I asked him, well, what am I need to learn? I said, well, I'm talking about ancient Kip. Can you give me something about that? He can't. All he want to do is argue about the map that I used. See, it's funny, but this is what they do. But brothers, sisters, I gave you now the last 2 weeks, I gave you 4 ethnic groups at least. I've given you today, I gave you Yoruba and I gave you the Fulani people, the Fola people. The other week, I gave you the Akan and Ga, how their languages when they ran Egypt and so forth. I gave you the evidence to that. And the brothers and sisters who showed up late today, go back earlier in my video. I gave you the evidence in my talk about Ka and Ba for the Fulani. We have the name, which is prevalent among the Fulani people, Bari. How Bari, this name came about. Who was the king, one of the pharaohs of Egypt? His name was Ka. So they ran the religious facilities of Kemet at the time. Everything was related to Ka and Ba. This is what we believe as Fulani people at that time. This is what we believe. When the Khan had it, they called God Adonai. That's what they call it. We use, I forgot the Fulani what they call it, but it's similar. But the Fulani people were very much concentrated on the after death because they concentrated on that. This is why they came up with the concept of Ka and Ba, meaning the unification of the soul. See, and in the inner, into the heavens. See, so this is an interesting development. I explained how the Fulani people became the way they claim. I mean, where they look. They mix with the Greeks and the Romans in the north, and this is why the Fulani people have this different look about them than their West African brothers. When the Greeks and the Romans came, all the Akan and the Ga, the Ewe people, the Mende, Mendinka, all of the ethnic groups we know in West Africa, they went to the south and stayed next in the Nubia. And I showed you the mural, the new communities that they had. You had all these different black people from different groups, Ga, Akan, Mende, Wolof, Jolof, all of these groups were represented. Tiv, Igbo, Yoruba, Asante people, okay, the Compelli people, the Sinike people, the Siri people, all those people were involved. They went down to the South Egypt and they stayed there in communities by their murals. But the Fulani people stayed to the north with their cattle and they mixed with the Romans and the Greeks. That's why the Fulani look the way they look, brothers and sisters. Now you can understand that, and that's evidence, as you've been hearing me say for the last 6 months, the Fulani people reached down out of Egypt. And we got documentation from some scientists who say that they were black like the Nubians, but because they begin to mix for centuries with the Greeks and Romans, they start to look like me and other Fulani people with lighter skin, especially our sisters who have straight hair. So these characteristics have stayed with us for over 3,000 years. And I told you about the Yoruba people, how the Yoruba got their name. It came out of ancient Egypt from their religious concepts when they were running Kempt at that time. So I gave you more proof shows that Egypt is ours, and Egypt was black from the beginning, and it was ours from the beginning, and so forth. I gave you this. And when you argue with the defenders of what the racism is going on, you talk to them about the linguistics. And go back to this and start doing your research, pull the linguistics, brothers and sisters. That'll get them every time. And you ask them, why isn't the Neher related to any of the European religions? Maybe Greek, because the Greeks were there. They took a lot of the Neher with them there in Greece. We know that. And that's why their script looks a lot similar to the Egypt. And they admit that they got that from us. But the French and the English and all these other people, the Neher has nothing to do with them. But the Neher, when you look at the Yoruba language, very similar. I showed you proof of that. The Fulani language, very similar. The Wolof, very similar. You have words that are same from Neher to ancient Wolof, very much the same. Very interesting. So, and we got here, Egyptian has to be household because the word Shabbat has the roots of Shah means drink and Baka means arrow. Yes, now this is, I told you like my name, Shabaka, because I got that from, from this deep royal, we call this in Arabic, that I had. And I saw this man, jet black in color. And he talked to me and so on and so on. He was my ancestor and whatnot. This is 2000. When I woke up, I was in a pool of sweat. After that, after I heard all that, I went to change my name to reflect his name. See, so this is what happened. Also, when Shabaka is related to the Neher, because if you look at the name in the language, it'd be either it'd be Shiba okay. This, if you look at Neher in the original, my name, the Shabaka, who was the king, would be this SBA, would be his name. That'd be his name under the Neher. Okay, but we also know that Shabaka, there's many roots of that. There was many descendants from that. The Shaban people, there's the Shabeka people, and we even have in Morocco, we have the name Shabeka. Here we have a river in a valley called Wad Shabeka. In Algeria, there's an area they call Wad Shabaka. The Amazigh, when they left Egypt, they used the name of Shabaka to call their country, which they call Dola in Arabic, Dola Shabaka. See, so we have that information there, and it could be because we know he came from the lower Egypt, and we know it's Nubia today. See, we know that, but we also know now, as you saw the mural I gave you of pictures, we know that in the Nubia region, they had different black people there, different. many. The Nubian people were the darkest, all of them. If you look at the mirror, the murals that I showed you earlier here, you go back and I showed a couple of days ago. Some black, others are light brown skin, because as black people start to come, they went down further south and they begin to live together. So he could be Hausa. See, we don't really know for sure. We don't have all the evidence, but we know his descendants came across Sudan, across into West Africa, and even crossed to the North Africa, because we have Shabeka. The Shabeka people are the Shabaka people. There's Shabaka, there's Shabeka, there's Shaban. There's a whole list. I had a map of all these names related to Shabaka. So it's good. And Taharka also sounds Hausa. Yes, and it could be. It could be, my dear brother. It could be. It could be, because Taharka and then Pianke. Pianke also, remember, which is, I think, Pianke. I'm trying to remember now. Pianke. I wish Mark is here, because he has the names down good. Pianke, I think Pianke, I'm trying to remember. Pianke was the brother or the son of Shabaka, or the father. I can't remember now, because it's so much history. But yeah, you could be right in that, my dear brother, and whatnot. So if there's any more questions here, if anybody has any more things, please get ready to close here. You tell me, and I will answer the question, and let me know. And if there's something else here. And I hope you review this tape again, brothers and sisters, and take a look at it and examine this evidence. I only gave you bits of it because I wanted to bring just a point, so that way you can see that the connection between ancient Egypt and West Africans. I gave you some of it, not all of it. So that way, because I'll be here for days upon days explaining all of the languages and what happened and so forth and so on, how we got to where we got. But there's a lot, and I'm going to cover some other ethnic groups. I gave you four ethnic groups from Egypt who are West Africa. I'll give you more, inshallah ta'ala, before I hit to the Exodus. The Exodus, again, it's going to be very complex, but I wanted to give you linguistics, so that way it brings you up to speed, so you'll understand when I start talking and give you names. And you remember something I talked about also that was part of the 17th dynasty and the 16th dynasty, was the name Ra. Okay, you remember Ra? And remember, I put this here, and I have to get out of here because my wife is going to jump on me. The ancient Akan and others in mixtures used this as the prefix. Ra Moses. See, it's a name, because Moses' name is an Egyptian name. It's not Hebrew. That's right, brothers and sisters. It's not Jew and Hebrew. It's not Jewish or Hebrew. It's not. It's either Akan or some of other West African dialects. But religion, because they follow Ra, you have the name Ra. Okay, before as the prefix before Ra Yahya. See, right? The Fulani came about 200, 300 years later and began to rule the land. See, and they took as prefix Ka Musa, Ka Yahya, Ka Ahmed, Ka. Now we know Bahri. Bahri is a famous name of the ancient Fulani people, and we still have a lot of Bahri people today. Bahri is famous, raging out of the religion that was practiced and the belief of Ka and Ba, which I explained to you many times today about this. Go back in there and review that. See, 300 years before, it was Ra, because they worship Ra, which means Subhanahu wa ta'ala, the maker of the sun. See, Ra. The Fulani people came 300 years later after that to run Egypt. Everything, your names had to have the prefix basically of Ka. This is why Ka, Ba is prevalent in the Fulani dialects today. And I hope my brothers who see this and who speak the Fulani dialect very well, many of the dialects, you get back with me to talk to me more about this. Because as I started to learn Pular, I start seeing the sentence grammar. I see Ka in the beginning, the name. So now I understand kind of like where that came from. It's beautiful, brothers and sisters. Our history is so rich. It's so deep. You should be very proud of it. You should be very proud of it. Look how our brothers, yes, it's not Islam. We understand today. We only give you history, but we're giving you something how our brothers believed at that time. See, and how they deviated too, because the Akhenaten came, he stopped all that. He said, "You Fulani, you got to stop using the name Ka. You stop it. You Akan, you use the name Ra before your name. You got to stop that." When Akhenaten came in, he put an end to all of that. No more Ka Musa or Ka Yahya or Ra Musa or Ra Yahya. He said no to that. Your name was Musa, his name Musa. Your name was Yahya, is Yahya. He changed that. But before Akhenaten took over in the 18th dynasty, these names, the Fulani people, when they run it, Ka Yahya, Ka Musa, Ka Ahmed. See, very interesting. Very interesting. Our brother here, Assalamu alaikum. How you doing, my dear brother? What does Andrama mean in Fulani? Because I hear Fulani. Yeah, it means hello. It also means thank you as well. There's other, it's a very polite term. According to who you're speaking to, the Fulani dialects are like many other African dialects. You have, politeness, and then you have general population and politeness, and the elders, you speak to them. So Andrama is, like a way of saying hello or salam, because you have marhaba also is in that category, but also you can use anjarama, anjarama meaning thank you as well. It means hello, yes, and I believe yes, hello, hi. It's a very polite way to speak to another person and whatnot. It also, you can use it in the form of thank you, and I know in Pular, and I think in the Masende and the Messina dialect also, you can use that for a way of saying thank you. You can use it as abbreviation. Again, a word of respect to somebody, to showing you, showing politeness to a person, and so forth and so on. So, okay, my dear brothers and sisters, if there's anything else, because I got to get out of here. I don't see any more questions. Anybody got one more question? Please give it to me right now so I can give it to you. I can answer it. If you have any comments or something like this, please let me know here, because if not, then I got to get going here, and I got to pray, because I'm a Muslim, so I got to make my prayer. You know what I mean? And I got to pray on time. But Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows my heart. He knows I'm doing this for a good purpose here and whatnot. I'll take this last one, and then I'll say you could scroll my comments if you don't mind. Okay, let me see what you got up here. Where you got? Okay, I see. Where we got, I got you here. Okay, here. Okay, yeah. Okay. They don't have Bruce R. The RV. That's kind of far for because no Fulani is pure. Well, yes. We talked about this earlier in the sense because the mixture. But I assure you of this: the Fulani people are African people. And if you look, I saw something here in YouTube. I was trying to explain. I was still trying to figure the name. Oh, this Fulani, he was a doctor or something. He was talking about, he was doing some studies on Fulani people, did DNA. He went to on the woman's side, he found LO series like my mom, the L1 series on my mom. But he went to one brother and he went to his heritage and DNA testing. Of course, he had one R series because he had a great grandfather European, because he was up in north in Morocco. He had a European father or something or other. But he found something in there. He found this it was EM2 or something, which ties him in to ancient Egypt. He found the EM series in that, because it's not only E1B. There's E1, it's EM2. There's many. Let me pull that up again. There's many of these, okay, in our series. It's just not only one. You see, there's many. And this is all the West Africans here. The Fulani people are not put in this. Excuse me. But you'll find, if you go do it, he did the research. It was like M2 something. Here, because you see MA4, you see E, You see the EU, he was EM2 or something like this. Talking about the Fulani, he got this genotype out of the man because on the original age out of his mother side, he was EM2. I can't remember, something like that. I saw it the other day and whatnot. But as we know before now, we have many Fulani people, same with the Somali people, who are going away from saying they're African, and they're wrong because they are African people. They're not European. I don't care if they mixed or not. They're not European people. And anyone says that, they're stupid. They're ignorant because they're not European people, because you look at the children. And also the proof is because the historians said that the Fulani people, they understood them today. And now we kind of understand that they had a name for the Fulani people. And I believe they called the Fulani people Ka people. They call them Kara or Ka people. That's what they call them, because this is what they believe, because everything for them centered around Ka, which we know in Arabic as your nefs, about the soul, right? Ka is when you die, and Ba is when you go up into the heavens. So they called them a primitive name, I think, like Ba, like Ka. I'm gonna do more research on this, but they uncovered this in the hieroglyphics. So it's very, very interesting. And as I said before, brothers and sisters, no West African can claim he's pure Hausa or he's pure Yoruba. That's a fallacy. Every West African man or woman who does the DNA, you'll see you're going to be across a 7 or 8 different ethnic groups. You're not going to be pure anything. You're going to be West African, but you're not going to be, you have a predominant of being Igbo, but you're going to see probably Fulani there and Yoruba, and you probably may even see Mende or Mendika. You don't know what you're going to find in there because the people travel a lot. Okay. And this is, so none of us are pure Fulani or Hausa or Mende or Mendinka. None of us. None of us are pure any of that. We're West African, but we have a main stock, yes. Hausa or Mendinka or something like that. But you also have other minor blood in you as well that cover in West Africa. Because that's how it was when you left from Egypt. There were no pure anything. They were just black people because they lived together for so long, for many centuries. They began to leave across, to go across North Africa, into West Africa. And then as they began to settle into their areas, the people who were Ga still kept their language. The people who were Hausa kept theirs. The people who were Khan, they kept theirs. And that's how we got with the business we got. So it's very interesting, brothers and sisters. So I got to leave you with that. And I'm hoping that we got your interest piqued here today. And I'm hoping, my dear brothers and sisters, that Subhanahu bless you guys and protect you until the next time, and that we can meet again. And I'll talk again about this fascinating subject about the Egypt is ours and about our Black heritage of ancient Kip. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.